And sometimes we look into our experience and see what's happening in our inner world and how that may be reflected in the outer world. And in that way, we may find some guidance. That's my question, how we go about doing that. Because we see in this week's Parsha that we have the choice of Rivka as a wife for Yitzchak. And the way in which that's done is very interesting. And I want to take a look carefully at different parameters that I find in the way in which the servant of Abraham that we know as Eliezer, how he goes about his mission of finding a wife for Yitzchak. And it's something that I think comes up for all of us now. We're in the middle of a war, and it's hard not to keep that to get that completely out of our mind. In particular, the massacre that took place precisely on Shabbat, on Simchat Torah. You can ask, what does that mean? And not what does that mean generally, mystically, because of these sins or something like that, but what does it mean to me, to each of us, or what exactly is going on in our experience today, how we experience it, what meaning that has to us. So we want to make choices that are in accordance with God's will. We'd like to get some guidance about that. In logotherapy, that approach to psychology that looks at the meaning of things that take place in our life as being most significant, and that's what we really lack. We are searching for meaning, we're searching for meaning. And we look for the meaning of the moment. Sometimes we see within a particular moment that there's some message that we can read. How can we read such a message? How can we discover that?
Do you think that that's true in every moment, or does it have to be true when one contemplates it and thinks there's an inner meaning?
Okay, here's the answer to that question. Thank you for it. From the Ramban, right? At the end of Parshat Bo, a famous quote, Hamalevowitz brings it on our Parsha, where the Ramban says, from a recognition of the large-scale historic miracles, right, Kriyat Yamsuf, man is led to acknowledge the hidden ones, which constitute the foundation of the whole Torah. Just move this over. For no man has any portion in the law of Moses, our teacher, until he is convinced that all our affairs and chance occurrences and the routine workings of the universe, both in the private and the public field, are miracles and are not to be attributed merely to nature. So yes, according to Ramban, it's always happening. God is always present. God is determining every feature of our world in every way, our inner experience and the outer workings of the world. And sometimes that's something that's revealed to us, and other times not. But I would say that it's appropriate for us to look for that, to ask the question, because what we want to see is how God is in our lives. And that's looking for that miracle, that message that God is giving us in the way in which He is creating the world that we experience. And that's why I say that we can, by looking within our experience, perhaps receive guidance about issues that are significant to us. And so, Bruce, really, it's an academic question whether, there's a sound in the forest, even if I don't hear it when the tree falls, and whether or not here there's a meaning, even when I don't look for it. What's important is that I'm always invited to look for it, and when I do so, there is a possibility that I will discover it, particularly if we follow some of the ideas that I want to present in this shiur. Actually, that's the whole idea of the shiur.
So
There's
this
never a
this
time as Hastir Panim where God says, I'll leave the world to itself and God doesn't get involved. Hastir Panim.
I'm not sure I heard what you had to say. Could you repeat it, please, Avi?
There's never a moment where God says, Hastir Panim, I'm walking, leaving the world alone by itself for a little bit.
Oh yeah, I know that Haster Panim. Yes, here we're talking about hidden miracles, right? To acknowledge the hidden ones. The Ramban says God is hidden, but He's nonetheless determining everything. It's not hidden in the sense that God is saying, "Oh, let's just everything run according to chance or however it's going to go." God is there in every single thing. That is our faith. That is certainly my faith. That whatever takes place, we can say about it, why did God want this to take place? What does God expect from me in particular, individually? Because that's the real question that each of us have for ourselves in presenting this to me, right? So, I mean, it's one thing to consider what is the meaning of what's going on in the world right now, and that's all well and good, and you can speculate about that. But what's more to the point in terms of our service of God is how does that have meaning for me? How is it that I'm going through this? What does this do to me in terms of my relationship to God? How can I perhaps move closer to God in this particular environment that I find myself?
So this isn't being reduced to, I have an early mincha, I have a later mincha. I need to think about what might be the meaning in which minyan I'm going to. I mean, what does God want me to do? I mean, at what point do I filter out one's normal daily activities? Of course, after the fact, something might have occurred and say, wow, look what just happened. I met so-and-so. I wouldn't have been, because I picked this minyan instead of that minyan. That's very nice after the fact. But before I do any activity, am I supposed to wonder and really contemplate, uh, what does God want me to do in this case? Or do I need some larger frameworks, a bigger event to ask that question?
Okay, I think that it's real. What we're really discussing here are more significant issues, but any issue might be significant to you, and there might be some so-called coincidence of some sort that might bring it to your awareness that maybe there is a choice here and I should take a look at it. But in general, I'm referring to things of a more weighty nature, let's say, because obviously you could drive yourself nuts, in any situation asking this. But for example, if I'm about to have a conversation with an individual, I may want to get in tune with, what place, what context this is, and what my expectations are, what my prayers are, and that there might take place within this conversation or anything that's about to happen or where I have to make a choice in any situation. Let's go through it and then you'll see how you might particularly apply it. Okay, so let's just start at it. I want to, in order to give some support for this kind of approach, to mention that the word Torah comes from the word hora'ah, which means to demonstration and showing the way. It's not just information, right? The Torah is not just a history book or information about, how you're supposed to go about doing this mitzvah or the other. It's not just that, okay? But it's something that's intended to give guidance and give a direction, that we're supposed to follow. So when we learn Torah, whatever we learn, whether it's a deep dive into the halacha, which you just did, or whatever it may be, we should indeed be looking for some kind of guidance. And studying the books and getting the information and what's written there is not sufficient. That's not called learning Torah in this sense. And to look for guidance, even when you're not looking at the books, but to look for guidance from God, is called learning Torah. So you can learn Torah from your experience. That's my intention. And then the question is, how do we go about doing that? Okay. So I already mentioned, thinking about what's taking place now, and I say that I tend to look at the parsha and to see the inner meaning, that is, to get some direction from the Torah that speaks to our soul, that gives a direction and how we should proceed in our lives. And of course, I'm sure that each of you is listening here has had some sort of experience of the sort where you felt that in some way you were being given direction through the experience that you were having, and you might consider those moments as we go through discussing the different character of what we're going. So in the parsha, just give it context. What are we talking about? We're talking about after last week's parsha ended, where Abraham learned that Rivka has been born. And then we have at the beginning of the parsha, the burial of Sarah Imenu. And then immediately after that, Abraham asked for his servant, who is not named, but we know as Eliezer, to go and find a wife for Yitzchak. And he says to him to go to Artzi Moladati, go to where he's translated my land, my birthplace. But if I may, just in this case, again, look at the inner meaning here. Eretz, in general, in Hasidic interpretation, is understood as having to do with ratzon, or in this case, if we're talking about the particular way of Abraham, we know is chesed, that all of Abraham's desire, his ratzon, was to do chesed. And so, if we take it not in a pshat way, but through, again, in learning the inner meaning, he's telling Eliezer, I want you to go to somewhere and find a wife who has also this character like mine. And, also Moladati, my birthplace, this is where I first developed this kind of character. And so go to a place where it has that kind of potential, right? And and so he goes off to the area where Abraham's family is located, Aram Naharaim. And the first thing that we notice is that there's a synchronicity, right? Eliezer.
Does it matter?
What's that?
Matter at all? Should it matter to us, or do we care that he? I think we learned that he's born in Ur of the Chaldean Empire in Ur.
Yeah.
Father Terach brought them and then stopped at Haran, and that's where he's going to. So he's not going to his birthplace. He's going to where his family happens to be residing. Does that matter at all in the story, or is that an irrelevant in irrelevancy.
Um,
Because why say go to your birthplace? It's
well, I think you're just giving further a, say, gushbanka, further support for what I just said, that it's not intended as the simple meaning of my land, my birthplace, but intended as a place where my character can be, from which my character can be developed. In other words, why not go to the woman there in Canaan? Right? Why does he have to go off as a place? Because Canaan is known as a place that has a culture that is, you know, not so positive, right? Considered abominations and so on. So that's not a place where you're likely to find someone with the right kind of character that we want. So go to a place where you'll find someone with a potential for good character, and that's my family, right? Abraham, of course, came from a family of idol worshippers. His father was an idol worshiper, I guess his brother, but nonetheless, he came out of it, right? So there was some possibility, something there. And he's saying, go look and see if you can find someone that will meet these characteristics. That's the way I would understand.
I
But
will
let's
say
not,
that like the Middle East today, they're very clan oriented.
right.
Doesn't matter where they're living, the loyalty is to the original family chamula. And so not to cast aspersions on the local people,
Right.
although one can certainly do that. He's being sent back to meet his blood relatives.
That's the shot, but that's not what we're discussing. This is a class on the inner meaning. Okay.
And they may
So,
be an inner meaning in that.
so we're looking for, Bruce, we're looking now to look to see how we go about finding guidance from our experience. Okay.
I mean,
Not to,
couldn't that be an inner meaning?
I'm not trying to discuss what is the correct interpretation of Artsy and Melodity Correga. I just want to suggest that it may have indication of something other than the pshat. That's all.
No, I just thought the inner meaning might very well be telling us that your blood relatives, despite what you might think, the inner meaning is search them out because your blood is thicker than anything. There could be an inner meaning in that. I mean,
That doesn't sound like an inner meaning to me, but okay, that's fine. It's inner because the blood is inside the body. I don't know why. I don't know why you
now
see that.
imagine if you send your kids back to New Jersey. That'd be an
Yeah,
odd thing to do, very odd thing to do. But yet,
right.
if you did it, the inner meaning in that is somehow a woman he finds in the neighborhood you grew up in somehow is counterintuitive, yet that's the teaching. There's an inner meaning in that, that somehow, no,
Right.
no, find a local girl. Go
Right. So
back.
it's not the blood, right? It's the character. It's not the fact that they're related in some kind of objective format. It's a question of whether or not there's a certain culture, a certain character, certain values. Okay, but let's not get sidetracked. Okay, I want to go on and try to discuss some very interesting, I think, characters to the experience that we could see here of Eliezer, which I myself have invented in my understanding of Parsha to help give us guidance regarding how to learn from our experience. So if I may, I like to focus on that if I can. So the first thing is well known to you, Bruce, the idea of synchronicity, and that's sort of something that very much strikes us here in the Parsha. I'll read here the psukim that are relevant when Eliezer comes and prays to find the wife. He says, now he had not yet finished speaking, and behold, Rebecca came out. Right? So there's a synchronicity according to the Torah when he was speaking his prayer, and he had not yet finished, and just as he's doing that, Rebecca came out. And you can see within the experience of Eliezer, when he recounts it later on, when he's speaking to Rivka's family, he says to them, I had not yet finished speaking thus in my heart. And behold, Rivka came out. Right? So there's a correlation between what was happening in his heart, right? The prayer that was really in his heart, and Rivka coming out. And this is something that takes place with synchronicity. If you're not familiar with the term, refers to the contiguity between events and taking place in the same area, the same place, or the same time. And in particular, there a correspondence between something in our inner experience and something in the outer world. Right? It was discussed by Carl Jung, and it's a very relevant, I believe, in psychotherapy general, and in general in being aware or having certain mindfulness of our experience. So by being aware of what's in our heart, having that mindfulness indeed, and being honest about it, not trying to, kid ourselves that it was this way or that way, right? We had in the previous parsha where Sarah, laughed. And she said, no, I didn't. Oh, yes, you did. You have to be honest. Yeah, God knows that indeed she did laugh. So we have to know exactly what is going on within ourselves, and to see something taking place at that moment that may be related to it. I find often when I'm given an aliyah in the Torah, in shul, they call me up for an aliyah. At that moment, I ask myself, what is the issue that I'm working on? What would I like the Torah to speak to me about? And to try to make that real for me. And it's very interesting to see then what particular psukim are read when I go up to the Torah, or in general when we're learning Torah, because Torah is, of course, the place to find this kind of guidance from heaven. When we're learning Torah, we should be aware of what is meaningful, what is significant to me at that time, and to see perhaps that the Torah may be speaking to that in some subtle way, or maybe even more explicitly. And that's a way in which we can learn Torah in the full sense of looking for guidance. So the idea of just being observant of synchronicity requires this mindfulness and a careful consideration of what is taking place around me, right? And so I spoke about, what is taking place around us today, and, some of the difficulties that we're going to with the news is, and not necessarily what we would call good news. And the question is, what meaning does that have to me at this moment? Requires my being aware of exactly what is going on with me at this moment in my relationship to people around me, or in my own inner struggles. In what way is that reflected in what I'm experiencing of what's going on around me? I think that's the question that we need to ask. So that's, the first thing, observing synchronicity, and that's very clear in our parsha that that's what's happening. And when we're looking for this guidance, we have to believe that we will be guided, that indeed, that we have to have certain confidence in this process that it is going to take place. And we see in the parsha that Abraham says, when he's sending out Eliezer, he says, the Lord God of heavens, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke about me, and who swore to me saying to your seed, will I give this land? He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. And notice that he says, not only that he will send his angel, he'll send it before you. That suggests that you will see it. You will see the providence at work. There will be such providence. You will receive guidance, and you will see it. We have to believe that. And Abraham is encouraging Eliezer to believe that in order to prepare him that he should indeed receive that guidance, that God will send his angel. Okay? So that's the second feature I see within the parsha. A third thing is that we have to be committed. Abraham has Eliezer swear. And it's interesting, he had go to an extreme of making an oath. And indeed, Eliezer did swear to him that he would do as he was asked. Okay? To take a wife from these people, not from those people, and to bring the wife back. He swore that he would do that. He had the commitment. Now, of course, we don't have necessarily a particular mission in mind that we can say that we're committed to. But when we do look for guidance within our experience, we're looking for the meaning of the moment. The question is, what are we going to do with that guidance? Are we committed indeed to following it? Once we recognize that that is what God is saying, so we do have that kind of clarity, but that is our belief, and that's how we experience it. Then we have to have the commitment indeed to do that. Okay. And that's something that we need to work on in general, that we want to, if Hashem says, do so and so, we're ready to say, Hineni, I'm committed to do that. So that's another feature that we see here within the parsha. A fourth thing that we can do. Eliezer prays, right? He says, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please cause to happen. In Hebrew, hakrena, cause a mikre, cause to happen to me today, and perform loving kindness with my master Abraham. So Eliezer is asking for this happenstance, this synchronicity, if you will, but he's asking that God should cause it. He's praying to God that, you should take a hand, get involved here. I need the guidance, and I want to see your guidance. And so please give me an indication of how I should go. Right? Hakrenna. It's a very interesting expression. Is it praying for God to create something which seems like a coincidence, a mikre, but it will be something, a coincidence that'll have significance, and so there'll be a synchronicity in that sense. Okay, so far. No questions, comments? Okay, we'll go further. Another important aspect I see here is that in the prayer and this whole relationship to the event, Eliezer doesn't ask, to find the right technology here, or the right method that he's got to use in order to find a wife, find the right dating site, what kind of information you put in, or whatever. He's not trying to make it happen. Right? He's relinquishing control, saying, God, it's really in your hands. I don't know how to make this happen. And, I'm not looking for any way that I can definitely make it happen. I realize it's dependent on you. And in that way, we have to be ready to go with the flow. It's when we let go. We get out of our routine and just, you know, sort of go out there without any particular expectations or attempt to control things, that miracles happen and we discover them. And that's the attitude that we need to take if we want to receive guidance in this way from our experience.
By the way, if we didn't have the story as we know it,
Mhm.
if I'm reading it, I would have surmised that he would have found his way to Avram's family. He has a brother. They have descendants. And he would have checked them out, told his mission. They would have either agreed to show him the appropriate young women that are marriageable. And that's how he would normally have chosen, rather than the very unusual approach that the Torah shows us, that
Yeah,
something
no,
happens.
yeah, thank you, Bruce, once again. That helps me to explain the point precisely. Indeed, if you read the Parsha carefully, right, and you see how indeed he goes and prays for someone to be revealed of a certain character and doesn't say anything about the family. And Ezra Philo gives her a bracelet before he asks her about the family. It's only afterwards when he goes to the family and he recounts the story, he makes it as though he were going to the family, so that the family won't be in any way be offended by it. But indeed, what I want to say is Abraham's mission that he gives to Eliezer is not precisely to go to the family, but to go to a place where you can find the right kind of woman. That's artsy umlarati. And indeed, the family is a reasonable place to go. And if he was going to try to make it happen, like I say, he's not, then maybe you're right, Bruce. That's exactly what he would have done. Let's go right to the family and see if we got somebody appropriate there. But he didn't do it that way. And that's why, again, I think that this is an opportunity to see how we can go about learning from our experience and getting guidance from our experience when we're not trying to, use our reason how to make it happen, but opening up to discovering the meaning that is there.
In
Okay?
fact, if you went to a shadchan today, they would probably tell you not to jump at the first opportunity, the first girl you met.
No, we'll get further. We'll see. We're not jumping. Absolutely not jumping, but we're going to take a look. Okay? That's one of the parameters that were mentioned. Now, the other thing is the strong feeling, right? I've had several very interesting synchronicities in my life, and what I found is, the most powerful is when I was really feeling very, very strongly about something at the moment, and I didn't realize what was about to happen. But it has to do with that strong feeling, and I think that makes it more likely that this kind of synchronicity, this kind of guidance will take place. Indeed, Carl Jung mentions that the strong affect is one of the parameters that he noticed also in his cases where there was the synchronicity. And we have an indication here in the parasha when we have the Vayoma, when he begins to pray, Eliezer, he begins to pray, the Vayoma is with the Shalshelet, Vayoma, the trope that goes up and down 3 times, which indicates that there's some kind of inner struggle going on. I said it occurs only a few times, like maybe 4 times in the Torah, something like that. And this is one of those times. And it may be, as the Chazal say, that Eliezer was conflicted about whether or not he really wanted this mission to succeed or not. Of course, he was committed, and he had sworn, but nonetheless he had a desire that perhaps the Rivka could marry someone with him, and maybe that would be an option. And so he had to get clear. I mean, it was torn. Now is the moment of truth, and he's praying. And whatever it may be that was going on within him, it's clear from the Shalshevet that there was a very, very, very strong feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually very odd. I mean, he knows Eliezer for many years. It's his main disciple, let's say, who has a daughter who Avram probably knows. And he's willing to pass that up. Avram, in fact, wants to pass that up to go along with, you know, well, you can say not the DNA. I look at it as the DNA of his family because they're not going to know who the girl is. They're not going to know her character. And one cannot know character on meeting someone briefly. So I can only say that he's going to choose the DNA of the family and not even the greatest family. Not it.
Well,
Not.
we talked about that. I don't think that necessarily he was looking for the DNA family, but I don't have an explanation here exactly regarding the daughter, which of course is a midrash in any event of Eliezer. Not clear, but all I want to say in terms of what we can learn, right? Again, not the intellectual correct interpretation of the Torah. You know, that's interesting, but that's not relevant to me right now as I'm trying to learn from my experience. What I need to do is to enlist all the feeling that I have regarding the issue about which I would like to receive guidance, and to allow that feeling to be fully experienced, and that will indeed give perhaps a greater likelihood that I will be able to receive guidance from my experience. I just want to mention that as one of the parameters that we find do take place in this kind of situation.
No, I'm just saying for inner meaning, I'd have to say to put logic aside.
Okay, as I said, the relinquish control, but also to raise up one's feeling about the issue to see that it's significant. Right? It was when I was, in very, very deep mourning over an individual that I had a absolutely, amazing synchronicity that I couldn't explain any other way. But I'm not going to try to tell the whole story right now, unless perhaps at another time. But the point is that that kind of feeling does make that more likely, I believe. Okay, so here's, I think, also a very, very important aspect, and that is what I call purity of heart, humility. It says Avram said to his servant, right? Everywhere Eliezer is not mentioned by name, he's referred to as a servant, Eved, one who serves. He is not present as far as we see in the pshat of the situation. He has put himself aside and he is serving his master. And it says the elder of his house who ruled over all that was his, the servant, Eliezer is being said here, ruled over all that was his. And the pshat is ruling over all that was Abraham. But the idea of ruling over all that was his suggests that Eliezer was ruling over himself, that he had this kind of ability to annul his particular wants and needs and put them aside, and that way rule over them and allow himself to be there just for the mission, just for what is being requested for him to do. And that's a very, very crucial thing, when we're looking at the inner meaning, it may sound as though I say, well, we have to look inside ourselves. It may see, oh, what's important is me. That what I want to do is what's good for me. I'm trying to understand myself. And that would be a mistake to think that the inner meaning, even though it deals with the world, our individual inner world, is dealing about ourselves. Because it's really about going beyond that self in terms of the ego and going deeper and seeing where that aspect of ourselves that wants to be there for others, that wants to serve others, what I can do to receive guidance and how to give that more a dominance, right? So we have within ourselves, right, a body, a soul, and within our inner world, there is more a bodily side and a more divine, soulful side. There is this inner battle. And what we want is to have dominance of the soulful side, of that side that wants to service. And here we have a hint of that in the fact that we see everywhere that it's the servant who is indeed finding the wife for Yitzchak in this way. So I think that's another key point in approaching receiving guidance, is that we have to identify where our self-interests are and consciously try to put that aside and look beyond that to see in what way we can serve. And then we can find the kind of guidance that will be something which is authentic and not something which is perverted for my self-interest. And it's not that's easy to say, it's purity of heart, but it's not easy to get there. That's work. It's the inner work that we need to do. So another thing, which also is very obvious here in the Parsha, and we already mentioned the idea of connecting to values, right? So when he prays, Eliezer asks that the maiden that he will see, that will come out, she will say, drink, and I will also water your camels. There'll be this eagerness to give, right? And this giving quality, this idea of chesed, is, I would argue, the essential teaching of the Torah, is the essential character that we identify with Abraham. And it comes from the idea of love your fellow as yourself, being klal but Torah, important, maybe the single most important general rule of the Torah is loving the other. And that's the kind of value that we need to connect to. There may be other values as well that we see as being significant. And we need to have clarity about what our values are when we approach a situation where, again, we're looking for guidance from our experience, clarity about our values, and that's the direction that we want to receive guidance regarding that. Okay? And then I've got altogether 12 of these different things. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention the idea passing. They say that there are 3 signs in Sarah's tent, and that the light, the candles they lit from Erev Shabbat to Erev Shabbat, and that there was a bracha in the dough, and the dough was blessed, that you would get tremendous satisfaction from eating the bread that was baked by Sarah, and that there was a cloud over the tent, which again, it could indicate the presence of the Shekhinah, And also there's a fourth, that the tent was open on all sides, which again is the idea of the chesed, open on all sides, mean ready to receive guests from whatever direction. That is, so that any and all people are respected and welcome, and to have, benefit of being within this tent, to be in relationship with, us, that want to connect them with Hashem, with God. And of course, the story here is that after Sarah passed away, before Rivka came, these signs were absent. But when Rivka returned, according to the Midrash, as all of these aspects returned as well. And so we see again the character of Rivka in having that divine quality and a connection to Hashem. And these signs, by the way, are also what we find in the tabernacle, in the Mishkan, that there is the menorah which is lit from Erev Shabbat to Erev Shabbat, and there was a lechem apanim that had the blessing that just a little bit was satisfying, and that there was a cloud of Hashem's Shekhinah over the tent. So this is an example of what a Jewish home should be, and how that's created by the woman of the home, and whether that woman was Sarah, Rivka, and that's the character that we're looking for. I thought that was a nice thing for the Parsha just to mention in passing, that relevant to our values. The other thing is we see that how Eliezer acts with result, with this urgency, right? When Abraham first speaks to him, immediately he takes the camels, and then he goes, and he arose, and he went. He wasn't wasting any time, okay? And when he was already outside the city, right, he didn't even bother going inside, getting cleaned up, doing some other thing, checking out. No, he's already outside the city. Let's get the job done. We're looking for a wife, right? And after having gotten the approval that Rivka should go with him to be the wife for Yitzchak, when he's with the family, Rivka's family, right away he gets up early in the morning and he says, "Let's go. Send me away." So, what we see about this idea of the urgency is that we may be looking for guidance, but then we have all other kinds of things that are, interesting and maybe satisfying to us. We have other needs and wants that we may have, not to get distracted by that, to go for the one thing. The guidance is what you want. Stick with that. Go directly towards go. Don't collect the $200. And really, that is to keep the goal in focus in that way, and to act also with this devotion that we see from Eliezer, which is more or less goes together with that he was willing to make sacrifices, right? He was invited to sit down and eat with the family, and he says, he must have been hungry. It's a long journey, right? But, well, first have something to eat, after the first course, maybe we can start to talk about it. No, he doesn't want to eat yet. First, let's discuss what we have to discuss. So in general, we have to be willing to make sacrifices. If this is important to us, and it should be important to us, if, as we say, it's not, as Bruce asked in the beginning, just any old issue that we're asking for guidance about. Okay? So then we have to be willing to make sacrifices. And there has to be, a complete devotion to that issue, whatever it may be that is concerning us. Here we have a particular mission of finding a wife, but each of us may have some issue which to discern what we need to do is the mission. And we have to be willing to sacrifice in order to complete that mission. Okay, and now about jumping into it, and Bruce mentioned before, we don't see that Eliezer jumps. It says he made the camels kneel. I'm sorry, I'm going to my to 12. First, before I get to 12, the 12 is about not jumping. 11, before I get to that, to consider the meaning of a time and place that I find myself in. And that we see that also, I think, fairly clearly in the Parsha. It's very interesting indeed that we're talking about being by a well, and we're talking about being as the evening approaches. And at the time when the maidens go out to draw water.
So
Right?
that sounds very calculated. I mean, well thought out.
Well, no, I mean, he just came outside the city and here, boom, that's the first thing he gets.
No, what I'm saying it's that the time that the women come out to get water. That must have
Yeah,
been a
but I don't know if he planned that.
cusp for the time. I mean,
I don't know if Eliezer planned it. Again, it's not that he's making it happen. I'm just saying that we might take note of, and of course we're reading the Torah here, right? So these things are mentioned. Take note of the meaning of the time and place, not just within our understanding of the Parsha, let's say we want to do, but in terms, again, what we're looking in our particular experience, what does this particular time does this time have meaning to me? Does this particular place have meaning to me? What can I find in the time and place that might also give me a hint about something? Let's see how it works in the Parsha, and then we can see how we might apply that as well. So, as I said, it was by a well, right? And the well can be known from what we recently read when Hagar was sent out and things looked bad for her. So she was then given her divine guidance when the well was revealed to her, right? That was the divine guidance that was revealed. There was a well there. And a well in general represents wisdom. Its water flows down from above to below. And in general, in understanding the inner meaning of water, of course, we say in Maya the Torah, water always refers to Torah, or if we will, wisdom that comes from Hashem, that comes from God. Okay, so that's a meaning of being by a well, and well also coming from the depths, right? So it was a time to draw from those depths, right? It says, Eitzet HaShoavot, those who draw from the depths, right? And it was, the eighth era was referred to as even time, the time between day and night, which day represents the revealed, night, the hidden, that there will be a connection between the revealed and the heaven. This time of what's called Ben Hashmashol is a sort of magical time, and that's a special time that things can be revealed. And interestingly enough, we know that this is the time that Yitzchak will go out to pray. It says at the end of this whole parsha that Isaac went forth to pray in the field towards evening. And we know that we have mincha because that's where the time at which Yitzchak prayed. Abraham was in the morning, and Yitzchak at this time of mincha, and we can assume that he was praying at the same time that Eliezer was praying. In fact, that's what the Zohar says that. that the cock was praying when Eliezer was praying. So there was another synchronicity of that. And presumably, being unmarried man, with his mother passing away, he was looking for a wife. He's praying for a wife, just as Eliezer was praying that he should find him a wife. So it was definitely a good time for Eliezer to pray. It's very meaningful at this particular time. Right? And we should think about, whenever we are indeed looking for this kind of guidance, at what is going through the kind of rhythm of time that we are in, and take note of that in our mindfulness, and take note of the kind of place. Is it within our room? Is it outside in a forest? What is the significance of time and the place? And now just getting to see our hours almost up, to the last element that I wanted to mention, and that is we don't see that Eliezer jumped in, right? It says that he was astonished, and standing silent. He's waiting to know whether the Lord had caused his way to prosper or not. He sees this maiden come out, and she's going to get the water and everything like that, but he's still checking it out. Right? Rashi says he was astonished and startled. He saw the matter nearing success, and he was silent and engrossed in thought. He was reflecting. And Uncle says that he was waiting to see, meaning that he waited and stood in one place to see whether Hashem was really going to bring this about or not. So we need to reflect that. We may have a certain meaning which seems to be presented to us, but we have to see, does this really look like it's working out? Does this make sense in my experience now? And does this indeed fit together? Having put aside my self-interest and having seen my commitment, my devotion to the situation, and looking carefully to see what has taken place, whatever a synchronicity in me, what values I have, what feelings I have, what prayer I have. Having gone through all this, I need to reflect, not to jump at the first thing that meets me, but consider it, because it may be that I'm being tricked, and I have to check all the bases to see that indeed this is what I'm being guided to do. And so I've completed what I've said. I hope that you also have given some consideration to experiences that you've had, that you felt you had guidance from your experience. If there's more time, we could maybe share more about experiences, but I think our hour is pretty much up.
Thank you, Aryeh. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. All the best to all of you.
Thank you.
We shall hear good news.